Many consider Metal Gear Solid 3 to be a masterpiece of a video game, and it truly holds up to deserve that praise. Metal Gear creator Hideo Kojima has continuously introduced new themes and stories into the Metal Gear franchise, but Snake Eater was quite unique. It diverged quite a bit from the serious undertone of Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, but still had a consistent narrative that stood out from many of its over-the-top moments. In a way, Metal Gear Solid 3 beautifully blended a cinematic narrative that one expects from a Metal Gear title, with a bizarre camp style that in some strange way did not put gamers off and actually engaged them more. While we had a new protagonist in Naked Snake, who would later go on to become Big Boss in future Metal Gear titles, the factor that stood out the most was how much cultural influence had gone into Snake Eater. From its opening cutscene, it was apparent that Metal Gear Solid 3 was diverging from the Kubrick references and themes of past games. From the get-go, Snake Eater gave off a 60s Bond-esque feeling, and that is what fans usually compare. However, it's not as simple as being just a Bond film translated for video games. We have to go back and look at the 1960s to understand the over-the-top references.
What would it take for you to see things my way?
A lot more than you've got.
The 60s was a renaissance of sorts for film and media. The decade was known for its portrayal of historical drama with films like Cleopatra and Spartacus, psychological horror, romance and comedy, and of course spy films such as the James Bond films based on Ian Fleming's novels. Speaking of romance and comedy though, I'm sure there was quite a bit of that in Snake Eater. As previously stated, Metal Gear Solid 3 does often get compared to a typical James Bond film. Its opening alone was clearly inspired by Bond. The Bond films of the 60s, primarily starring Sean Connery, were rich in dialogue and unforgettable villains, so it's quite easy to assume that the conception of Colonel Volgin and the other bosses from the title may have been inspired by villains like Dr. No and Goldfinger. Hideo Kojima has also gone on to state that Goldfinger was one of the Bond films that deserves the most credit for the creation of Metal Gear. But Snake was certainly not James Bond. He lacked the smoothness of Sean Connery's Bond, and he really wasn't the charming playboy like Roger Moore's Bond. No, Naked Snake was not like any of those Bonds, but he may have been based on Timothy Dalton's Bond. Dalton's Bond was grittier and a whole lot more serious than Moore's. In addition to that, there is more supporting evidence that Kojima drew on James Bond for Metal Gear Solid 3. Metal Gear Solid 3 has its own Bond girl of some sort. Femme Fatale Eva was presented as a sort of Bond girl that complemented Vesper Lynd from Ian Fleming's Casino Royale novel. In both cases, the women are presented as assistants to their male protagonists that later develop a love interest. And in both cases, it is later revealed that they were unwilling double agents. Vesper Lynd delivered the confession through a note after she committed suicide, while Eva recorded the message and left it behind for Snake. Eva also does not commit suicide. So it's quite observable that the James Bond spy films and novels helped inspire Metal Gear Solid 3. Metal Gear Solid 3 was also greatly influenced by music from the 60s. The opening theme, Snake Eater, was very much a parody of the opening theme to the James Bond film Goldfinger. But at the height of the 60s, there was also the appearance of a Brit that Kojima has been fond of for years. Metal Gear Solid 3 contained many David Bowie references, most notably the Major Tom in reference to Bowie's Major Tom character from his song Space Oddity. The name Major Tom was used by Major Zero as a codename, although in the game he references the name to the 1963 film The Great Escape. Another reference to the song is made, but this time by the character of the Fury when he says, "I'm coming home." Speaking of the Fury, Kojima gave a great nod to the space race between the Soviet Union and the United States of America in the 60s by including a character like the Fury in the game. And that is the influence of pop culture on Metal Gear Solid 3. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel for more content in the near future. This has been Closer Look. Thank you for watching.